Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. The incidence of drugged driving, not drunk driving, but drugged driving in New Jersey has shown a dramatic increase. The question is, why and what does that mean? Here to try to answer some of those questions is Robert Sinclair, Manager of Media Relations for AAA Northeast. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
Let's talk about the numbers first so we know what we're talking about. What is the increase?
Well, what we've seen now that the last year for which we have data, 2016, 103 drivers, fatally injured drivers, of those drivers that were tested for drugs and alcohol, 103 tested positive for drugs and 92 tested positive for alcohol. And that's a reversal of the numbers from 2012 through 2015. So 2015, 2016, we're seeing now that there are more drugged drivers who are dying in crashes in New Jersey compared to those who were under the influence of alcohol. And of those drug drivers, 19% had cannabinoids in their system and 14% had a narcotic. And the rest were other or some sort of combination of drugs.
And I want to zero in on the marijuana, and you know why I want to zero in on that, because they're talking about legalized marijuana in New Jersey and in New York where you do work and in Connecticut where you do work. How does that play into that argument?
Well, we want drivers, we want the state to be prepared that if marijuana is going to be legal, that there need to be certain things in place so that it is safe. Really, it's the messaging. You know, we've communicated very effectively that you should not drink and drive, but we see that with the legalization of marijuana for recreational use in 9 states and medical use in 30 states, that people are sort of becoming a little more open to the idea of using marijuana and driving. And that's a very, very bad idea. We did studies in Washington State and Colorado in the 2 years after those states legalized recreational marijuana, and we found that deaths of people who were under the influence of marijuana, or at least had marijuana in their system, skyrocketed. So we don't want a similar situation.
Skyrocketed beyond the norm because the argument could be, of course, if it's legalized, you're going to have more people smoking marijuana, and you'd necessarily have more people in accidents because of that. Can you make a direct link? Is it a bigger jump than normal?
Well, we've seen a big jump here in New Jersey, and it's not legal. So, you know,
Got it. Yeah,
and
no, I understand.
A much bigger jump in the states of Washington and Colorado, where it is now legal.
Now, the AAA has not taken a position on this, at least AAA Northeast. Some of the AAAs have taken a position in other states and lobbied against marijuana, legalized marijuana, but not Northeast AAA.
No, what we want to see happen is that, excuse me, that there are certain systems in place so that it can be done as safely as possible as far as driving is concerned, that we need to have a sufficient number of DREs, drug recognition experts. These are police officers that are specifically trained in how to recognize people that are behind the wheel and under the influence of drugs. Part of the problem also is the fact that there's no roadside breathalyzer for marijuana use. And admittedly, one of the flaws of our study is that marijuana can remain in the system of a person who's a chronic user for weeks after they last used. So we acknowledge that, and you know, if there was some sort of roadside breathalyzer, we could eliminate that problem of someone perhaps testing positive for marijuana in their system, but not being impaired. There are certain states that have what are called per se limits, meaning if you have any amount of THC, the active chemical in marijuana that impairs, if you have any in your system, you're considered to having used and you will be treated as such. But we realize that the science falls short in that case, and it's not necessarily so that because you test positive for marijuana that you are impaired. A company out in California, Hound Labs, say that they have a test, a roadside breathalyzer test for marijuana. If that's the case, they're going to get very, very rich. We also think that there needs to be sufficient education so that the message is communicated, such as it is with alcohol, that if you drink, don't drive. If you smoke, don't drive. It's the same thing. But we're also seeing a problem because of opioids and people using those legal drugs and people getting behind the wheel after using those.
There's some price to pay with all of us for this, is there not? I mean, I think that what people don't see is that our insurance rates, if the roads are going to be less safe, the insurance rates are going to go up.
Well, insurance actuarials are very, very precise data gatherers. And if they're watching the situation in Washington and Colorado and some of the other states where the deaths of people using drugs have increased, no doubt that there'll be a price to pay. We've already seen insurance rates increase across the board around the country because of distracted driving. That there are so many distracted driving crashes, people addled by their cell phones or the infotainment systems in their vehicles, that the number of crashes is going up, and we are all paying an extra price as a result, probably 5 to 10%.
You throw the drugs in with the legalized drugs in with the distracted drivers, and is age a consideration in all of this?
For those using marijuana and getting behind the wheel, not necessarily. We don't have the data for New Jersey, but in New York, we're able to get summons data, those who are given summonses for smoking and driving, and I think there was one person over 80. And most of them were concentrated in the 19, 20, and 21-year-old age groups. About 14% of all the summonses given out for drug driving were in those age groups. If that's the case in New York, it's probably the same in the rest of the country.
And that's what I was getting at. So if you have 19, 20-year-olds that already have their cell phones and are distracted and are now using legalized marijuana, that's a dangerous brew.
And we already know that young people are dangerous drivers because they lack the skills and experience. They don't get the necessary training. We think most of the training in many states around the country is inadequate, that there need to be more hours of classroom and particularly behind the wheel supervised driving. And so you throw that into the mix along with drugs and cell phones and what have you, and it's a formula for some bad driving.
All right, sir, thank you very much. And please come back when you do the distracted driving study. Robert Sinclair, Manager of Media Relations for AAA Northeast. Jersey Matters continues right after this. Still to come on Jersey Matters, how'd you like to have to go out and tag sharks? Our Vanessa Tyler introduces you to some people who do just that when Jersey Matters continues.